Okay, we're back with Jon Peniel, and if you were with us, you heard that amazing story, which I will put up in my headlines shortly. John, what do you want to tell us about the ancient literature and the ancient texts and so forth that you came across as a teenager in that Tibetan monastery that talked about our visitors, which are here now and have been here apparently throughout the millennia?
Well, the old teachings and texts, which were probably last updated about 10,000 years ago and go way back before that.
Did you see, excuse me, I got to go into this a little bit more. Did you actually see these texts, and I assume what the procedure would be is that the monks would continue to copy them.
Yes.
As over the years the originals began to fade, they'd make new copies.
Yeah. And
these were definitely traced back 10,000 years ago. So what you're saying, I think, is that ancient Atlantis somehow, at least some of the documentation, ended up in this particular monastery.
Yeah. It went through people that survived it. Well, there were different people that survived it, but intact pretty well, knew it was coming. That's the children of the Law of One. And it was in their prophecies that Atlantis was going to be destroyed and this pole shift was going to take place and an asteroid hit and all of that back then.
Uh-huh.
And they left before it took place, and they went to Egypt and built the Great Pyramid and its associated pyramids and continued on work that they were doing there. And after that was all done, they went to different places on the planet and started other monasteries, I guess you'd call them.
Uh-huh.
Centers, also places to live in Tibet, in the Pyrenees, in the Yucatan Peninsula, and such.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the Pyrenees. Let me just duck this in right now. There is apparently no direct way to trace back the Basque people to any known ethnic group that exists in Europe today, and I'll let you take it from there.
Well, that would be one example of it. There's also an island in the Caribbean that's the same way, that's inhabited by blonde, blue-eyed people. And I just heard something interesting about Hitler a few weeks ago, a documentary that was done, and I hadn't known this previously, that the SS was actually a spiritual organization. And Hitler did, those people they sent out to try and prove that their lineage was from Atlantis, and actually did a lot of good uncovering of archaeological finds that would never have been discovered in the process, and they seemed to know what they were doing and where they were going. They were going to the right places to look.
There is much about World War II, Hitler, and the entire Third Reich that most of the world doesn't know yet. Maybe sometime we'll be able to have access to more of that data. But you're right. It's a very, very strange and mysterious thing, that whole period of our history.
Rail and this castle that was the headquarters for the SS, and 12 pedestals, and they believed they were reincarnation of the Knights of the Round Table, which was interesting too. They actually did parades where they were all decked out in knight outfits with swords, and but instead of like the lion logo on the front, they had the swastika.
Yeah, strange things.
Swastika was kind of interesting too, because it was a very ancient symbol of the light forces, but it had been reversed.
Well, that particular symbol was actually used on one American combat division up until around 1942 or 43, and they had to drop it for obvious reasons. But it wasn't something that the Germans. Yeah, the Germans didn't exactly invent it. I mean, it had been around for a long time.
Well, because I think they're interested in metaphysics. Again, they picked that up. That's been used by the Hopis, it was used by the Tibetans and such, but again, it was backwards. I can't remember.
I understand.
Which now, one was clockwise and one was counterclockwise.
Right. Well, the Germans went clockwise.
Yeah, they reversed it.
Okay. All right. Well, what did you learn back in the monastery from the ancient documentation that was there, 10,000 years at least, about visitors? Who are they? How many different races?
Because again, my main pursuit was spiritual, and I wanted to get enlightened. I wanted to get free from the pain of life that I was experiencing. So that's what I really focused on. I just kind of came upon these things as. Are you there? Hello?
Right here. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead. By the way, we sound just fine on the broadcast, but between the two of us, there is a phone line problem, but not to worry.
Anyway, so these were, I came upon incidentally, more than searching them out. But basically, they talked about between 40 and 50 different alien species that had been visiting the Earth for a long time, and a lot of different type of craft that was used. And of course, back then in the days of Atlantis, there were terrestrial craft too that actually is another interesting thing, but it's a different story, but were actually mistaken in recent times, as late as the 1970s, for extraterrestrial UFOs, but they were actually old Atlantean and Lemurian craft that were still being seen.
Flown by whom?
Flown by, this gets into this other story, but flown by an actual genetic line Atlantean colony that was living inside of Mount Shasta in California.
Okay, well, back to Shasta again. We always seem to hit there sooner or later. Be right back with Jon Peniel in just a couple of minutes on Jeff Rense. Glad you're here. Lots ahead, so don't go away. Okay, we're back and visiting with Jon Peniel tonight. Jon's got a remarkable website. You might want to take a look. And if you joined us late, he is the man, according to many Edgar Casey followers and the ARE, who Edgar Casey himself mentioned will be coming to help spread the reality of our past and our present and our future as well. Okay, Jon, so 40 to 50, 60 races.
Yeah, and
been visiting here for a long time.
Here. I mean, they talk about there being literally millions of other races out there.
Yeah.
That most solar systems have some point of similar evolution as this one has, where some kind of sentient life develops, and then that takes different courses. So they talked about between these 40 and 50 different races that the spiritual evolution of them all vary greatly, and it goes down from the bottom of the ladder of there being warnings about cigar-shaped craft, that those beings are very evil, to sphere.
So smoking really isn't good for you, is it?
Well,
there's the message right there.
You have to ask William Jefferson about that.
Yeah.
But,
William Jefferson, Rockefeller, Clinton.
Going to the far end of the spectrum would be that if a race developed sufficiently spiritually, that they would eventually lose the need for physical craft to travel and essentially be more like angels. And a lot of things that are taken as UFOs are actually like the auras of very intense, positive, loving beings. And those have been accounted for. I don't know if you'd ever heard this story. There was a TV show on called One Step Beyond, I think, in the 1950s. They did dramatizations of true stories. And this can be looked up in World War II historical records, but there was this one flyby of one of these more high consciousness UFOs across the fighting lines between France and Germany during World War II. And everybody sort of went into a trance, dropped their weapons, and just wandered off across enemy lines and didn't want to fight anymore. That was the effect of this one being.
Uh-huh.
So they can be good guys or bad guys and everything in between. And then you've got some that are kind of like our scientists, and they just want to capture sharks and elephants and lions and implant them with tags and track them. And there's all kinds of different things out there. Everybody gets too focused on the grays. It's just one of these species that are involved in things.
Right. All right. How did Jon Peniel come to be involved with a United Nations ambassador who had a string of amazing encounters? Tell us that story.
Well, I was on a mission trying to get more cooperation and communication between spiritual groups. And so I was traveling around meeting spiritual leaders and such. And I kept running into this woman over and over and over again. And finally we got to talking, and she told me her story, which was she was at a world summit in Japan, I think in the 1950s. This is a long time ago, so some of this might not be real accurate. And she was on a radio show and all of a sudden started talking about UFOs and aliens, and that she was given a mandate by higher consciousness aliens to try and get all of the world's political, scientific, and spiritual leaders together at one time in one place, and that if she succeeded, it would mean that humanity had evolved enough to have contact and help from these beings.
All right, and how high up in the hierarchy of the union did this woman go? Did she become an ambassador, you said?
She was an ambassador at the time, and after she did the radio show, she was fired. And then...
well, can you tell me to what agency or to what country she was an ambassador to?
I'm sorry?
Where was she an ambassador to? Here in the United States?
She was an ambassador to the United Nations.
Can you mention the country?
Probably.
Or you mentioned the continent.
Asia.
Okay.
And anyway, what happened was during the summit, there were massive sightings all over Japan for, I think, 5 days. And there were sightings by, policemen and all kinds of reputable people. It was very blatant. And because of that, she was not only reinstated, but by the time I had met her, she had a letter from the Secretary General, who at the time was named U Thant.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a letter asking cooperation from anybody she presented it to on her mission.
Oh.
So we kept running into the same people and crossing paths constantly. And after talking, we decided to travel together. So we traveled together for maybe a year and a half, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed my course a little bit, because besides meeting spiritual leaders, we were also meeting scientific leaders and political people. I avoided the political stuff, but I did meet a lot of very interesting cutting-edge physicists and such at the time that were working on what was very out there physics at the time, like quantum physics and such.
Well, what were the types of sightings she was having? And I assume you saw some of them too.
Well, what happened with her after that incident, where she went on her mission, everywhere she went, there were sightings. It was unavoidable. They were all around her. And,
same type craft, same type phenomena.